Hi everyone, we're gathered here today to discuss dumbbells, deadlifts, and diapers. Sort of, pretty much, but not really. We are going to talk about youth training and long-term athletic development. And essentially, we are going to talk about my kids all day. As we get started, I just want to give a shout out to coaches Travis Pelletier and Sean Nagel. They are some mentors as coaches and as fathers for me, so they have quite a bit of input on this presentation today, and I've tried to give them some props throughout, but honestly there's quite a few things that they had input on, so thank you to those guys for that and many other things. And my goals for today, I want to share tips and tricks that will provide a foundation for children, not just mine, to excel in wellness as well as athletic performance. I want to draw correlations from developing to developed athletes. What should we be doing regardless of age? So what are those little tykes doing that we may want to sort of reflect and look at what maybe some of the bigger kids or older populations should be doing? And then honestly, I've got a little bit of an agenda here. I want to gather information from you guys or knowledge on some items that are not mentioned. What have you seen, experienced, read, and learned to add to this presentation? What am I missing out on? What are some great ideas that would fit in really well with the rest of the information from today? So please, kind of keep your thinking cap on and just look for some details that I've missed because that's going to help make this presentation better, and it may help my children and other people's children just become healthier and more athletic down the road. And the way I want to kind of work our way through today is we're going to discuss nature and nurture to start, and we'll come back to that at the end as well. And then we're going to go through some other items in the order of breathing, then eating, then sleeping, and then movement. And I say, at the bottom there, I say that it's not, parenting advice is not included, but some things in here are definitely going to cross that line just a little bit, but it's not my goal to tell anybody how to parent, just how to make little humans into bigger, healthier, older humans, right? So that's our goals for today. That's our agenda. Okay, nature first, nurture. On the left, you're gonna see my daughter's left bicep being flexed in the womb. Apparently the doctor says she's never really sees that kind of action or muscular development in kids at this age, so that's a pretty good sign. I like it. So maybe there's just some nature in there, or I know personally I will be nurturing her flexing those biceps. But she's got a head start even before she arrived. So this was right around 3 months before we got her out of her mama. So right here, she's not flexing yet, but she's got a lot going on that day. It was a big day for her. She had a lot going on. In nature versus nurture, this kid loves to play. She comes out, she's a ball of energy, and we just try to feed into that and give her some fun things to do. So May 4th, 2020, the COVID lockdown is going on. We're going a little stir crazy. We just put together a little obstacle course, and you kind of teach her one event, teach her how to go on that slide, then teach her how to go through the tunnel, and then teach her how to crawl under the next, like the jumper, and then you teach her to start hopping up on some of the couch cushions. And that's the end of her obstacle course right there. And then we've got music playing, so she's going to dance a little bit. She's going to kiss the biceps, little victory dance, touchdown dance. And there it is. So we are definitely playing into some nature versus nurture, right? So once again, there's that left bicep that we saw earlier on the ultrasound, and it's just reappeared again, right? So I know I'll be keeping that going as long as I'm around, but yeah, just kind of, we have fun with it, and we're just trying to play with her and do the best that we can. So today's a little bit of a reflection about just getting our children to be healthier and more athletic. And I think there's quite a bit of carryover to the athletes that we coach at the college level and beyond, and definitely throughout the years in between. Again, nature versus nurture. There's a link in there somewhere. Let's take a look on the left at the pairing, the sons that are showing up in Major League Baseball that had fathers that played in Major League Baseball. And at the time of this article, I think this is pretty recent, so probably a 2020 article because it's got all the 2010s data there. There's been 255 sort of son legacies who had fathers play in the league. And then on the right there, you see Peyton, Archie, and Eli Manning. So a father who had two sons play in the NFL. And I understand that there's like a nephew coming up who's pretty sharp as well. So who knows what the future holds for that family. So that was kind of nature versus nurture, and we'll jump back to that later. The reason I want to talk about breath or bring that in is it's something that's going to be constantly occurring. Obviously, hopefully, going to be constantly occurring. So if we can adjust the breathing patterns, we might have a big impact. Small changes carried out over thousands and thousands of breaths, right? So two books that I would really recommend would be The Oxygen Advantage and Breath. And between these two books, it will kind of convince you or really encourage you to make sure that your kids are nose breathing. It's going to save you money on braces because their jaw, their palate, and their teeth are going to grow into a wider and healthier and better aligned. Giving little kids foods that they can chew is going to activate their jaw muscles and help develop a wider, stronger jaw, which is great for your teeth, but it's also going to improve the development of airways. Going through breath at rest, they say that 5.5 per minute at rest is ideal. It's a little bit of a challenge and it takes some time to kind of get there, but that might be something that you can kind of encourage your children when they're not playing and when they're not roughhousing, is just to get them to try to take longer, slower, deeper breaths. And we can all do that as old timers as well. And then those long, slow, deep breaths are going to have great impact through the nose, are going to have great impact on jaw development, airway development, teeth development. But it's also going to improve mental stress levels and also just physical disease. So if we want the foundation of our children's future athletic endeavors to just be healthy and well, breathing is a really good place to start. And that's a whole presentation for another time. When it comes to eating, a lot of drama attached to feeding little kids. I would say I like the Satter's hierarchy of food needs. First of all, you're going to want to feed that kid enough. If you've never heard your own child just scream bloody murder because they're hungry, you grab basically the nearest food that you can shove down their throat to make them quit crying. So I get it. I get parents who are maybe not working too hard to choose the healthiest foods. They might just want to get the foods that the kid is going to eat or not be fussy about, because listening to your own baby cry is not a lot of fun. So I think that this hierarchy of food needs really plays into what goes on when the children's really young, and then it all goes on to what we do as we get older as well. First of all, you're going to want enough food so you're not starving, and then acceptable food. You can start to kind of get a little bit pickier, making sure that food is regularly accessible, making sure the food tastes good, maybe with the novel food, trying new things out occasionally. And then instrumental food, really paying attention to what foods are going to make you feel better and help you achieve certain goals. When our kids are young enough, we make those decisions for them. They might make the first one or two decisions, but then after that, it's up to us. They get older, they might get to make some of those decisions themselves. And there's lots of adults who have trouble making the right decisions, in my opinion, anyways. So as far as what babies real young are going to eat, mammal milk for young is about 50% fats. So when you think about that, human babies are basically designed to eat very fatty foods. Well, if they end up on formula, that fat content kind of dies off. And then when you start looking at what foods are sort of manufactured for, cute to shove in little cute babies' mouths, a lot of it ends up being sort of cereal products and not containing a similar amount of protein or fat as breast milk. So we sort of evolved to be, fed breast milk for a few years in the beginning of our life. So in the beginning of our life, we have quite a few of the enzymes that are going to help us digest milk. And then a lot of times we will age out of that. So that's why younger children and babies can handle dairy products much better than older populations can. So be thinking about the fact that if these babies were sort of designed to be eating breast milk that has so much fat in it, when you do start feeding them food, you may want to go for fatty foods. I know that my kids are crazy about fatty pieces of salmon. They love avocado. They love nut butters. So they love eggs and egg yolks. So anything that's naturally fatty or has high fat content, my little kids who are still in diapers at this point, which isn't weird because they're 2 and less than 1, 2.5 and less than 1. So the younger we are, that high fat content is pretty great for us. I would say that might carry over because think about that there's no such thing as essential carbohydrates. We have essential fatty acids, essential amino acids, but no essential carbohydrates. Our bodies can do that. We can go through that process of gluconeogenesis. We can make carbohydrates fairly easily. And babies and real young children. Now, I'm not arguing that any athlete could become keto adapted and maintain their sprint ability or their repeated sprint ability. I have no interest in pushing a keto agenda, and I don't have a keto agenda to push anyways. But my thought process here is that if babies are intended to eat fats, shouldn't we just give them more fatty foods and let them thrive off of that? Now they don't have, babies have no performance measures to be reaching, so they don't need glucose stores unless they're underweight and you need to fatten them up to keep them healthy, which is a common concern in the early stages. Consider giving them fat to eat. And I think that correlates maybe to some of our older athletes. Again, I could care less if they're keto or not. That's not my thing. I don't do it either. But if we don't have athletes who are training hard and burning lots of calories and in a stage of performance, in a stage of achieving performance, so if they're in a postseason or they're in a detraining time, maybe they're injured, would not a fattier diet be appropriate for an athlete who needs to heal and needs to have downtime and they're not going out and pushing their bodies in training? So that's just a thought. Is that something that we might correlate from our younger little babies who are just crawling around and not producing performance really? Maybe they roll over or lift their head up or they start saying a few words or something like that, but they don't need to. Nobody's timing how fast they can run from one end of the house to the other. Or are they? Maybe. I was timing my daughter's obstacle course as we built it in. So that's just the thought, is that those babies are going to want fat. And maybe our older athletes in downtimes of training should shift their diets a little bit that direction as well. So this is not a Travis Pelletier original set of rules. He's borrowed this, but provided it to me. So I just wanted to pass the reference that I had over to him. And there's 3 rules for feeding a child. If there's 2 rules for the adult who's typically in charge or should be in charge, is that they're going to determine when a child eats. So establishing a schedule. They're also going to determine what a child eats. So Coach Travis has a boy, Johnny, and he's going to decide when Johnny eats. He's going to decide what Johnny eats. And if Coach Travis is eating unhealthy foods, little Johnny's probably going to want to eat those foods too. So pay attention to what kind of example you're setting. And then what we allow the child to decide is how much they eat. So sort of getting rid of that stigma of you're going to sit there until your plate is clean, which kind of put me off of green beans for probably about 20 years. But just allowing that child as they get a little bit older to kind of know and feel their own body sensations and to stop when they're ready. That was a little bit more parenting advice than I'll probably give the rest of the day, but it's pretty great advice. And now that my 2.5-year-old daughter has a big vocabulary on her and she can pretend to cry and start manipulating and doing things like that, these are not bad rules. And it's pretty much how we operate over here in order to prevent her from just eating junk food nonstop. So she gets very little junk food, but she wants it. If you give her a little bit, she recognizes it, she remembers it, and she wants more of it, just like adults. And keep in mind that we are not feeding ourselves or our children the same amount of food that we used to. Simple things like the plates increasing in size has led to our serving sizes increasing in size. This is one of many factors that has led to metabolic syndrome and obesity epidemic. And it's going to be very important for us to keep our young children healthy for a million reasons. But one I thought that was interesting that I want to bring up is that there is research that shows that there's data that shows that adipocytes set in childhood and adolescence level off during adulthood. So if you have more fat cells in childhood and through adolescence, you will have a much easier time at remaining fat and obese if you already are. And you'll have a harder time losing weight if you as you age. So, as we just want to keep our children or our athletes healthy and well, and that's our top priority, making sure that we're feeding them high quality foods and nurturing a lifestyle that lets them have a few less adipocytes in their youth and adolescence, so that they can have an easier time being healthier and maintaining a lean body mass as they age. And I won't read that one word for word, but you all go right ahead. And again, I'll let you read through that one. And let's move on to sleep. So we did breathing. Those are my notes on eating. And now let's talk about sleep. So looking at the age on the left and the hours of sleep that is suggested per 24 hours, according to the National Sleep Foundation, you see that babies sleep a lot. They need to. When they're young, their metabolisms are cruising. They are doing so much development and growth, and to get them to get that quality sleep, it's got to be a top priority for you, especially as parents, not only as coaches and athletes, where we want performance to come out, This is going to be huge. And again, that's another presentation, which I have multiple presentations. If anybody's interested, I can send those out, no problem at all. But really, we want these kids sleeping. It's going to help their immune systems. It's going to help their brain development, their body development. It's big. It's a secret weapon, right? I'll tell you some good news on my end is based on what our pediatrician was telling us. We have two of the worst sleepers in all of her clientele. Our two kids started out as a couple of the absolute worst sleepers, which made mom and dad some of the worst sleepers. And it was tough. But as we fought through several months of it and tried different sleep strategies, there's like 1 million sleep books out there on infant sleep timing and strategies and all these things. And now we're very fortunate that our kids are excellent sleepers. After they broke through those first 3 to 6 months, finally they gave up, and now they're awesome sleepers. They're consistent. They sleep pretty long throughout the night. We're very fortunate. So I'm hoping that that is a big pillar in them being healthy and generally awesome moving forward in life. So Mac is in the 4 to 11 month zone for like a couple more weeks. And he is sleeping in that window. And my daughter is over 2 years, and she is sleeping more like in the 0 to 3 months window. So she's a little bit older. Matilda is older than Mac, but she actually sleeps a little bit more than him. But when she's awake, she's a baller. She's moving. She's bouncing off walls. She wants to play. She wants to talk. She's nonstop. So she brings it, and then she takes a big sleep at night and then a good afternoon nap. So we paid for it in the beginning, but now we're kind of reaping the rewards. How to sleep better. I pulled a couple of slides from some other sleep presentations that I've done. Don't want to turn this into another sleep presentation, although that's in my nature. So I'm just going to grab a few bullets. Watch your sound. So block it out with a fan or with white noise or with earplugs, or 2 out of 3 of those or all 3 of those. Make it dark. We are meant to be sleeping in caves in the nighttime. Cool off. 60 to 66 degrees is going to be pretty much your ideal temperature. You can try some breathing patterns to help yourself to become more parasympathetic, to relax and fall asleep. Make sure you're exercising regularly. And then just a few more bullets. Avoid big meals before bed. Avoid spicy foods before bed. I like the saying. I didn't make it up. I wish I had. Eat right, sleep tight. Eat wrong, up all night long. Avoid sugar and caffeine. Those late night stimulants are just going to ruin a night of sleep. And that caffeine, I believe it has a half-life of 8 hours. So if you're going to go sleep at 9 o'clock, you wouldn't want to be drinking caffeine after 1 p.m. And I'll let you guys read through some more of those. So that was our sleep bullet. It's huge. It's a massively important topic, but I'll just leave it at that. If you guys want a presentation on that, reach out to me, and I've got links to those. As we move into sort of our movement section, I want to remind everybody the story of Milo of Croton. Milo and the bull. And it basically goes that when Milo was a young boy, his family was given a bull calf. And for whatever reason, they lived at the bottom of a hill or a mountain or like a big hill. And every morning to get the bull water, Milo would carry it up to the well in the stream at the top of the mountain. And as the bull grew, Milo was challenged to slowly lift a little bit more weight each day until he was a beast who could carry a full-grown bull up the mountain. And this is basically the idea of progressive overload. I like that when we're talking about youth, because they're going through so much development that giving them some challenges can have a huge impact on them. And one case like this, it would be Tori Allen. And Tori Allen is a really interesting sort of case study who she was living in a village for a big chunk of her youth, and there was monkeys and pet monkeys and monkeys to play with, and she would go out and climb in the trees with them. And what they found is that after a handful of years of climbing like that, her hands are larger than they should be. Her fingers are longer than they should be. Her wingspan, also known, I learned doing this research, is called the positive ape index. Sure. So typically, our wingspan is equivalent to our height, but having a longer wingspan is a big benefit for a lot of reasons. Maybe not so much if you're a power lifter, but basically or you're trying to do bench press, but basically for every other reason. And her grip strength, one article reported that she had the same grip strength as the average offensive NFL lineman. So the idea is that she was out climbing with those monkeys, and it triggered some changes in her body. And as Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do. So if we can start exposing our youth and our athletes to tasks that are going to help them improve them, obviously that's training. Just in general, that's our whole field and our area of expertise. But if we can expose youth and young athletes to it, might have some serious adaptations. Tori went on to become a wall climbing champion. She was a sponsored athlete. Kind of this story was highlighted in a lot of media. It was about 15, 20 years ago when this was popular. I had to go way back in the files in my TV watching brain to figure out, to pull this case study up. And on top of all those other things, that positive ape index is pretty rare in females, or it's rarer than it is in males. So I've got my daughter dangling. We dangle every chance we get. I'm actually building a jungle gym for the house in a couple of weeks here, so I'm excited about that. But she takes to it. She's natural with it. When she was a little baby, she'd go bent arms, and I could pick her up. And even when she was really young, she was into it, and she gets a kick out of it. And so it's a fun thing that she likes to go do. And I did not encourage her to do it at the top of the slide there, but she's an animal, so that's just how she rolls. Again, you're talking about a kid who was flexing in the womb at 6 months, so she's going to do her. So if we know that the story of Milo of Croton and Tori Allen, who played with monkeys, if we know that these young athletes might have major benefits from practicing and training in their youth, well, look at how many athletes are just being pulled out of competition just because they're not enjoying it, because they're not finding what their enthusiasm or what their passion is. So as of August 1st, 2019, the average kid is only playing sports for 3 years, quitting by age 11 because the sport isn't fun anymore. So there's been a big wave of coaches taking the fun out of it, or parents taking the fun out of it. What we got to remember is that if you are what you repeatedly do, we have to make sure we have ways to get our athletes to stay interested and stay intrigued, whether they're 9 years old or 19 years old. We want to keep it fun, right? And in youth, a good example or a good idea would be that a 12-year-old should not play or practice more than 12 hours a week. They're so young, and their body is so untrained. They've got such a low training age, right? If they're 12 years old, and it just might be better to mix it up and make sure that they're playing more than they're practicing, and playing as in having fun, right? And the National Athletic Trainers Association said that half of all children injuries are believed to be the result of overused joints and muscles. Let's try to mix up our training to avoid those overuse injuries, and let's try to keep things fun. Here's Paul Chek has, has several movements for us that he believes are going to happen naturally in nature for humans that we need to be good at. Squatting, lunging, walking, twisting, pushing, pulling, and bending. So let's make sure that as we're training, we encourage and we challenge our athletes to do as much. I know for me, sometimes when I've got Matilda playing around and maybe she wants like a treat or anything like that, sometimes I say, all right, do a push-up, and she does a push-up, and then I have her do a lunge, and then I have her do a jump, and then I have her do a sprint. So that's like a fun little thing that we can do anytime, anywhere, and we dance with her, and she shakes her groove thing to some different YouTube channels, and she's got a great ear for music and all the hits from the 90s that we play for her. And I would say that Coach Check had put together a great battery of movements there. But I would add in crawling. Sorry, cut off just a little bit there, but it's crawling, brachiation, and brachiation is sort of like swinging like a monkey through the trees or just hanging. So it's transporting yourself by hanging from an object, and also jumping. So jumping, hopping, and leaping, these are great things to mix in there. Again, if you have the chance to take a child from being a total meatball into being an obstacle course machine, or teaching them how to do some of these movements, it's such a fascinating process, but it really shows you and reminds you that older athletes sometimes need to build up steam and do basics and build up even those really simple movements just to kind of polish their movement. So it's kind of funny that you would take an athlete and maybe have them do some basic movements. They might be in a multimillionaire professional athlete, but having them take a few steps back and do simple basic movements that are not so complex, that can have lots of benefits. You're polishing the foundation of their movements, and then you let them kind of go off and run and jump through the air and catch touchdowns and things like that. But sometimes as coaches, we can just help them polish and reintegrate basic movement patterns, and that's not gonna bite you in the butt. That's just keeping them safe, keeping them healthy, and reiterating basic movement patterns. Same thing with just practicing. These are kind of fun movements. I realized around like 18 months when my daughter was running around and jumping that we weren't doing any galloping or skipping or like side shuffling. Probably because you're constantly in awe that this little meatball is now running around, that you just kind of forget to teach them other things. But then getting her to do galloping, she picked up super quick. Sliding or shuffling, she picked up really well. And then skipping, we're still working on skipping, so she's not quite there yet. Crawling. Babies know how to crawl. They're pretty good at it when the time comes. So I wouldn't say I encourage crawling with my children, but they kind of, that's what babies do. They crawl, right? But for a few reasons, I try to keep them crawling longer than they want to. Even once they can walk, which both kids now can walk, and Max started running today, so that's crazy. He started running 5 steps at a time, and then he eats it, but that's fine. Tomorrow he'll probably stop falling over and he'll just be running, which is weird. There's several reasons we want them to crawl a little bit longer. We don't want them to give up on crawling just because they can walk. Everybody can, what healthy 20-year-old doesn't know how to walk, right? Now we're fortunate if we are healthy that we can walk, but just because you can walk doesn't mean that's the best thing for you, right? Crawling has lots of benefits. One of my favorite rationales that'll kind of like reach everybody, I think, is that Charles Poliquin, he said, he said parents will come to him and say, what can I do to give my son or my daughter an advantage? What kind of training do they need to do? And he'll say, well, how long did they crawl for? And I'm like, oh, we had them up walking, as soon as they could walk, we got them up, because you play sports on your feet, right? And he tells them they're stupid because they're missing out on a huge window of training where the babies can develop shoulder stability and upper body strength. And so he suggests that crawling is going to be one of the best things we can do. So you heard it from a pretty recognizable name, that crawling is great for them. And here's some more reasons why. Let's look at the spinal development. These babies are so cartilaginous. Their bones are more cartilage at the beginning and not so brittle. And if you look at this little chart here, it kind of shows you how that spine is formed. And it takes a little bit of time, but it starts looking like a real spine after a little while. And that process of the bones actually becoming bone is called ossification. So over time, the bone has become more brittle and forming into a more solid shape, right? If you keep them crawling, that's great because their spine is going to grow into like a optimal curvature, and the vertebrae are going to have ossified in a great position, and it's going to give them stronger, stouter backs as they age. And here are sort of some, I'm not going to read through these, but I'm looking for some ossification periods and just some reasons why we might want to keep them crawling. And again, as I'm going through this, remember, you can get back down and crawl around as a 20-year-old, as a 40-year-old, right? Crawling is good for everybody. Even your bones might be ossified, but every other reason that's being listed, these are great reasons. And another reason I'm going to keep my kids crawling is that I know that unique movement and where you can't see everything is going to challenge their brain to be a better problem solver. And it's also good for stress management. When we move different parts of our body, it's almost like how some people say like going dancing is like stress relieving. Well, if you were to get down on the ground, one of the reasons dancing is stress relieving is because your two halves of your brain are talking to each other. They're jumping across corpus callosum, right? They're jumping across this little patch of tissue called the corpus callosum. And as you're doing that, it's helping your brain process all kinds of things. And for young children who are experiencing the world for the first time, that's an outstanding attribute. That's an outstanding benefit amongst many others. And again, crawling is awesome for us. It doesn't have to be just for little kids in diapers. It can be for old kids in diapers. It can be for old kids not in diapers. I'll say, like, until the last couple of years, I took a big break from crawling, but now I'm down all the time with these kids and feeling good, and it's actually having some fun with it, right? So there's some different organizations that are coming out now with, it's pretty funny because they're teaching people how to crawl, because once we learn how to walk, we kind of stop going down and crawling, right? So a little kind of quoting / paraphrasing Nagel here is that falls are the leading cause of fatal injury in older generations, not just elderly, but like 50 plus. People forget how to fall. See children play, they are constantly going to the ground. After age 2, the majority of these are by choice. Nagel. So again, I reached out to a couple of coaches and I said, give me some feedback on what was going on and thoughts and things I missed. And he brought up crawling, and it's pretty funny because I didn't think to put it in here for adults, but I had done my first crawl workout in a long time the day before. So there's some different organizations now that are throwing out some information and some just different movement patterns that are kind of fun to play around with. And I've put a couple of links in there to different organizations. I would encourage you all that if you have only been doing If any crawling you've been doing has only been bear crawls, check out these sites and dig around a little bit and find some different crawl patterns and have a little bit more fun with it. I know it's as I've been doing that, my warm-ups for my athletes have gotten mixed up a little bit. There's some new blood in there, some things that I'm dropping at them and challenging them to do that they're having fun with, and that's kind of kicking their butts. So again, here are two different organizations and just some different strategies for crawling, some different little modalities that you can do. Just playing around. A lot of times we get so busy squatting and bench pressing and doing pull-ups that we forget to just play around and move our body. And all you're gonna get more stable shoulders, more mobile hips, stronger core. You're gonna get that stress relief that occurs in your brain from moving in coordinated fashion on both sides of your body. There's just a lot of benefits, and I'm kind of late to the party, but this is something that I'm going to be diving into more in the near future and playing around with more. It makes warm-ups more fun, and just it's a good challenge. Beware of using exercise as punishment. Again, we have such a huge, I forgot my statistic. Let me jump back up here. Let's see. The average child spends less than 3 years playing a sport. Do you think some of that might have to do with people acting like they're major pain and using exercise for punishment? I mean, it's not rocket science that if you take young athletes and make them hate the sensation of exercise, whether it's running or push-ups, that they're going to correlate that to physical exertion in general, right? So I try to avoid using exercise as punishment, whether it's children or mature athletes. Get creative, try to come up with some other methods. And if you've got a good major pain laugh impersonation, do it now. How about the arches of our feet? Children don't have them. They're born without them. All they have is they have a little fatty pad inside their foot where their arch one day will or will not be. And how can we encourage healthy arch development? We can do toe curls, reeling in a towel, let them go barefoot, doing dexterity drills, lifting up toes and wiggling toes, rolling the feet and massaging those muscles. And, at that young age, these kids do not need like arch support, right? They come with built-in arch support. They get those fatty pads on their feet, right? So with our older athletes, I think a lot of times we forget about that. It's just much easier to let them keep their shoes on, and we've got a million other things that we can focus on and work on. But feet are pretty dang important, right? I like training feet. I don't know why, but it's going to feel good to get those feet that are working so hard all the time, running up and down basketball courts and running up downstairs and whatever else. Just take them out and massage them on a ball. If you've ever done that with a team, you've heard the oohs and ahs and moans that kind of come out of it. Is that people are rarely taking care of their feet. They abuse their feet, but the second their foot hurts, they usually can't play their sport anymore. So just a reminder to take care of those feet, strengthen them up, be nice to them, all that good stuff. And then watch out for youth professionalization. There's some organizations where the children are playing the same, if not more, games and practices than those in college and pros. And these kids are traveling as well at young ages. So we know that it's important to stay joyful in youth and higher level competition, right? The more fun we have with our teams, more sort of a bigger effort we get out of them, right? And then we get better results. So just a reminder, this is not my strength. I'm working on it. but for us to have some fun, right? And bonus points for you if you recognize that young man in the photograph there. So as far as movement goes, I don't know if I made a point on this one, but basically that we need to recognize that a lot of our kids are overworked and we need to keep it fun and maybe be realistic about how much is enough and how much is too much. Reaching out to the not reaching out, but in research, I came across the American Developmental Model, which is a youth hockey organization. And I still have more research to do on where and how they got these numbers, but I want to put this chart up because it matches a lot of other things that I've seen. And I'll kind of describe that PHV point here. So if you look over on the left, I'm just going to read from that. At the very top of the growth spurt curve comes a point where the child is growing at his or her fastest rate. This point is referred to as PHV, or peak height velocity. After this point has been reached, the child's growth rate decelerates as they get closer to becoming a full mature adult. PHV is used as a marker in identifying early, normal, or late matures, and as a guide for determining direction in training programs. So taking a look at this, it gives you a little bit of an idea of when and what to do with youth athletes. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I did want to provide it. So that we can kind of take a look and keep in mind that those little humans' bodies are going through different stages. And again, I do need to do more research on this, why different things are occurring in different spaces. My monitor's beeping. I got these little rugrats are sleeping, and I don't know why it's beeping. So you just turn it off. That's how we roll. Because these kids are good sleepers, and I'm almost done with this presentation, so I'll go check on them in a minute here. So again, just keep in mind that different stages of life have different needs, right? But I would hop on that website. They've got some pretty interesting theories and philosophies on different stages to take athletes through before you start training them to compete. Out of like an 8-stage model, training them to compete was in like the 6th stage. They're doing all kinds of fun things and just developing basic foundational things ahead of that time. And I think a lot of times, one of the problems is that little Johnny or Sally comes in and the first thing they're doing is training to compete or training to have some sort of like world-class effort to try to become the best in the world on that day, instead of just being a youth and having fun and developing their base of knowledge and experience. Again, going on this tangent about children being overworked, Tommy John surgery, young men playing baseball and specializing year-round is essentially a big mistake when they're young. And it's going to lead to a lot of injuries, especially for pitchers. And the prevalence of the Tommy John surgery is just spiking out of control. Again, I'll just let you guys go through that a little bit here. I want to bring up two books by David Epstein. One is The Sports Gene, which really dives into nature versus nurture and looking at why some individuals and populations are incredible at a certain sport. And it looks at the different variables related to it, such as canyons and marathons. And he identifies bone structure and muscle types and hemoglobin content and things like that. But he also looks at their culture and the way that the land is and things like that. So great book, really recommend it. Too many good points in there to even start, other than to say that it's a great resource. And then I want to compare that to another book that he wrote called Range. where it says why generalists triumph in a specialized world. And the common theme from this book is that many athletes who are today renowned for being so great in one sport, when they were growing up, they played several different sports. And it's the culmination of their efforts into different spaces that created a true athlete who could excel in one space. It also gives them a chance to see what they're really good at and or what do they like. If you're playing 4 different sports, sometimes you're looking forward a little bit more to soccer season than you are to volleyball season or something along those lines. But just a great book, and is really going to push forward the notion that by mixing it up for youth sports and for, whether you're in business and just all kinds of things, by gathering different experiences, it gives you a wider base and a wider foundation. And much like a pyramid can only be as high or tall as it is wide, many athletes and many individuals in business and whatever other fields, they can only be as successful as the spectrum of their previous experience. So those Tommy John baseball players, those youth kids having surgery, they might be way better off, only playing baseball for a few months a year and playing 2 or 3 other sports, or at least one other sport throughout the year. And, Wayne Gretzky, he's got a quote where he talks about when winter would break into spring, he would drop his hockey gear off and pick up, his baseball glove and baseball bat and head out and go play that for a few months, right? So even the best in the world were mixing it up early on. And in fact, they were more likely to. And I just wanted to put this in because I feel like as long as we're going over so much youth-based information, the locus of control. So our ability to teach not only my daughter why she might need to go sit on the steps for a timeout because she just body slammed her little brother, that she's in trouble now because of something she did. I need to teach her that, just like we need to teach our athletes that when you're late to a lift and you haven't communicated or you missed the lift entirely, that there's a consequence. And it's not random, it's because of their actions and their behavior is that consequences, both good and bad, occur. And this is going to be good. This is just going to make our lives easier for behavior management. And it's also going to teach them that if they're eating correctly and sleeping correctly and training hard, there's going to be benefits there. So I just want to include this. If you're not familiar with the locus of control, just sort of like a quick and easy slide for you, or do yourself a favor and just dive into a little bit more with like a Google search, or just let's chat about it at some point. But essentially it says that an internal locus of control realizes that your actions affect the outside world in good or bad ways. And that external locus of control is kind of like, I don't have any control over the world. I'm a victim, right? It's internal is like a victor and external is like a victim. So we don't want victims for kids or for athletes, and we don't want to be victims either. All right, just a few good books or stories, I guess, to throw at you real quick. I would recommend that Wayne Gretzky book, in fact. If anybody wants to borrow it, let me know. It's an easy read, and it's pretty awesome to hear just how much passion this guy had for hockey in his youth. It's like he was born to be Wayne Gretzky, right? Incredible, but just a good book. If anybody wants to borrow it, let me know. The Matheny Manifesto basically just talks about Mike Matheny being raised in an environment where sports were fun and you played as much as you wanted, but more than that. And then you played different things, and that youth sports were a chance to go out and grow and develop, as opposed to being treated like a professional athlete when you're 8 years old. And then as he made his way out of professional baseball and began coaching his own son's baseball team, he had to reinstill basic sort of common sense rules into youth sports, and not allowing parents to bark at umpires or to put pressure on their own children. And so he had to protect his team from their own parents and from their own bad attitudes and things like that. And great story, really, really easy to go through, and just kind of reminds you that you want to make things fun and that you want to keep your athletes happy and safe, and just allow them to come in and perform without extra pressure and things like that. And if you are familiar with Tony Holler of the Feed the Cats sprint training program, he pulled a 180 one day with his track team, where instead of turning them into dragons, where they were dragging their butts around the track from exhaustion and long practices and getting just beat up all the time, he started treating them like cats, like big wildcats who would hunt and kill and then rest. So he became all about their nervous system and how they're feeling that day, and just getting them in a quick warm up, quick workout. Occasionally working them very hard, but the majority of training is all about high quality work, and letting them have a little bit of fun and just making it more joyful. So those 3 books are basically about the benefits and the great things that can happen, both on and off the field, when you're just keeping things positive and joyful, and just not overtraining and putting too much pressure on athletes. And then the other story about the Maranovich project, his father was a strength coach, and basically raised him with a lot of pressure, a lot of time training, specialized diet, specialized workout regimen, a lot of long practice hours, and put a lot of pressure on him. And eventually he basically snapped and crashed and burned with drugs and illegal behaviors and things like that. And it's just sort of like a precautionary tale. So if you ever want to just hear some crazy stories, dive into that a little bit, I've got a podcast I listen to that has a lot of profanity in it, but the stories they tell and how the way that they present the information is pretty entertaining. I'm not on the podcast. It's just a podcast I found. So we could go down a bunch of different rabbit holes, but I just wanted to kind of throw out some ideas for youth training, and also how we can correlate that to our collegiate athletes and even beyond. Nature versus nurture. Choose your parents wisely. Make it fun. Cross-train and offer a variety of activities. For breathing, I guess I could have typed in a couple more things, but you can go back to that first slide, that only slide on breathing. Breathe through the nose. Take long, deep, slow breaths when you're not competing. And make sure you have food that's chewy, right? As far as eating, consider that you may want more fat in your diet, especially for the young ones. Again, that's what breast milk is made from. And my kids go crazy for fattier foods. They love it, and they take to it. They take a real shining to it. And then I try to give them foods that they can chew, so they're developing their jaw muscles, and they're using their teeth, which Mac is he's up front only right now, so he doesn't need too much chewy stuff. But Matilda's she's like a shark. She's got full set. And then for adults, I think maybe many athletes might benefit from more fats in their diet, more healthy fats, that is. And then as far as giving them food that is chewy, Yeah, I think that would benefit them. There's been studies that show where rats given two groups of rats given the same food pellets, but one group of food pellets is softened up before giving it to the rats. That group of rats fattens up. The softer food makes them eat more because they have no sensation of fatigue in their jaws, and their stomachs don't have to break the food down because it's already broken down a little bit. So for us humans, sometimes when your jaw starts getting tired from chewing on a steak, you start thinking, all right, I'm probably done. I'm getting kind of worn out here, right? And then once those solid foods are going in your stomach, it's got to work a little bit extra, and it's going to digest a little bit slower, and you're going to burn a few more calories just by processing it. Sleep, we already went over. It's awesome. Prioritize it. Movement, we are what we repeatedly do. Some events require massive time, repetition, investments to master. One point I failed to make earlier when we were looking at the book, The Sports Gene, was a discussion that David Epstein goes into on Major League Baseball players and how many of them, when they are batting, they're not making conscious decisions about swinging, because the time it takes for the ball to leave a pitcher's hand and cross the plate is less time than our brains are going to take in the sight, think about it, and then produce a movement. So a lot of times their subconscious is actually performing that task. And so a lot of times we need to spend endless hours performing a task before we get good at it, right? So if a young athlete doesn't enjoy what they're doing, they're probably not going to invest that kind of time. Number 3, go barefoot. Number 4, crawl and hang regularly. Number 5, cross-train, be a generalist before specialists. 6, have fun. Enthusiasm is a secret weapon. 7, emphasize wellness. It is the top priority. I know we all want to win championships and be associated with the best, but I know we also don't want to do that and accomplish that at the sacrifice of people's health and wellness. And I love the saying, you got to crack a few eggs to make an omelet, but sometimes you got to prioritize health and wellness. Wanted to also just offer up some different lists for youth training. Ben Greenfield does a great podcast. He did a little mini book on the 10 things he wants his twin sons to do. He calls it raising tiny superhumans, and it's like a 40-minute listen. It's not bad at all, and it's got some great points in there. And then the NSCA also has a 10 pillars of successful long-term athletic development list. Again, I'm not going to read through them, but you guys sure can if you want to. All right, thanks for listening, and please be thinking of anything that I missed that you think is worth a share or worth kind of reminding me about, because personally, I want to raise some kick butt little humans, and also I think that there's a lot of correlations that we can make from our little kids to our big kids that are in the college arena. So thanks, guys. We'll talk.